Wonderful to have all of you here, everyone. Since it is now 10:01 and we have rapid numbers of attendees joining us, I'll get started with introductions so we can jump straight to the presentations. My name is Rowan Dorin. I'm an associate professor of history at Stanford University, and I have the great honor of serving this year as the chair of the Medieval Academy's Digital Humanities and Multimedia Studies Committee. Like many, perhaps all of you who are here today, I've been grappling with the new landscape of generative AI as I plan my courses and the rest of my life. And a lot of this involves thinking about policies and guidelines around appropriate student use of generative AI. But I'm also trying to think, as I think many of you are as well, to think more creatively around how to seize upon the affordances of this new technology to engage a wider audience and deepen their understanding of the medieval past. Now, by nature, I'm actually something of a Luddite, which I recognize as an odd confession from the chair of the Medieval Academy's Digital Humanities Committee. But I genuinely believe that generative AI is a hugely promising tool for medieval studies, and perhaps even more so than for many other fields of study. Speaking by my own experience, Stanford students who are drawn to history are often very eager to do innovative research on texts and topics that aren't well studied. They want to be like their colleagues, their other students in other disciplines who are doing cutting-edge research in engineering and biology and physics and sociology, and they want to be doing the same thing in history. But since most don't have the background in Latin or other medieval languages, they often end up decamping to work in other areas that have fewer linguistic barriers. And so I've had great success translating late medieval notarial and judicial records into English using ChatGPT over the past year. And the resulting student research papers have been really terrific. And some of our presenters today will be saying more and more critically reflective comments around these questions of ChatGPT and translation from medieval sources. And so indeed, I know that my colleagues around the world are embracing even more exciting and critically reflective pedagogies. And so I'm very pleased to have gathered some of them here today to share their experiences and their expertise. We have speakers ranging from Silicon Valley in California to the Saar Valley in Germany, whose interests range from medieval Ireland to medieval Japan, and who work in fields from archaeology to poetry. So hopefully a broad sweep across the pre-modern world. So I'm delighted to welcome first Deanna Forsman, who is an early medievalist and longtime faculty member at North Hennepin Community College in Minnesota. Next up, we'll then have Dr. Victoria McAlister, who is assistant professor at Towson University in Maryland, who is a historian and archaeologist specializing in medieval Ireland. Then we'll hear from Professor Cristina Andenna, Professor für Geschichte des Mittelalters at the Universität des Saarlandes in Germany, who is a specialist in late medieval religious communities and political culture, as well as a leading figure in numerous digital initiatives. And she'll be presenting along with her frequent collaborator, Dr. Miriam Weiss, wissenschaftliche Mitarbeiterin at the Universität des Saarlandes, who is very engaged not just in digital humanities research, but also in pedagogical innovation of many kinds. And finally, we'll be hearing from my Stanford colleague, Dr. Ariel Stillerman, assistant professor of East Asian languages and cultures, who is a specialist in medieval Japanese poetry, amongst other topics. So I'll hand things over now to Professor Forsman.
Thank you, and I will share my screen. I really just have the PowerPoint here to give you all something to look at instead of me. I teach at a community college. North Hennepin Community College is in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. And just to give you a sense of what my student population looks like, we are in the Twin Cities, so we're a metro area community college. We are a majority minority institution. The majority of our students are first generation. They are Pell eligible. Many of them are members of underrepresented communities, primarily Hmong, Liberian, and Somali. Those are the majority communities that we serve. So many of them have not taken a history class. Many of them struggle to read in English. There's a lot of challenges that this particular population faces. In the courses that I teach primarily the survey courses, so I don't get to spend all of my time on the Middle Ages. It is much more of a stop that we visit as we go through. And so I've been using generative AI, not just to translate primary and secondary sources from other languages into English, but also to translate them into versions of English that my students can better understand. Many of the sources that I have them read, they all read primary sources all of the time, are public domain translations, and many of them are going to be coming from 19th century translations. And my students really struggle to understand those translations. If I have older documents that are actually in English, they struggle even more to understand the archaic English, even if it's modern English. And so I've told them, translate it and use GenAI, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude AI. Those are the AIs that I tend to encourage them to use. Ask them to translate it into modern English. And my students find that they can get a better understanding of the primary source. I tell them you still have to look at what the language says in the original document versus what the AI translates it to and make that collation. But many of them are able to get through these documents more quickly than they would be able to. It would take them much longer through the semester to get used to that archaic English. In terms of making secondary research accessible to students, as we know, most of the secondary literature is not written with undergraduates of limited education levels to understand. It does actually get the main points available to them so they can actually engage with scholarly research in language that is accessible to them. And I find that they're able to take these ideas that they find in these secondary sources and then adapt it into their own historical thinking. So it's really making that literature accessible at a very low level, essentially, right? First semester of college. I've also had them specifically use generative AI to refine research topics to research questions. Many of them will have this idea of like, okay, I want to research whatever. Like, okay, that's great, but we're not making a summary of what we're learning. You have to have a historical argument. You have to have a question that you answer. And generative AI is really good at going back and forth with the students and giving them ideas to help them refine their general topic into a question. Sometimes it will actually give them a question, and I tell them, okay, don't just take the question that it gives you, but keep working with it until it's something that makes sense to you. And then probably the most exciting use that I have of GenAI is I actually have them use GenAI as a way for them to demonstrate what they have learned from a particular unit around a particular topic. So the assignment that I have is basically chat with generative AI, have some type of topic or prompt that you want to start out with, but their goal is to actually show me in their conversation with AI that they understand a particular theme, they understand how that theme connects across the different unit sources, whether it's the tertiary, the primary, the secondary, that they can bring in data specifically from their primary sources, from the visual sources that I'm giving them, and use it to poke at AI, critique AI, push AI, challenge AI, and see if they can actually identify historical thinking in the bot. So far, nobody's identified the bot actually engaging in historical thinking. The bot is very good at summarizing what is generally known, but challenging it to make those causal connections. It will only make a causal connection if it's there in the tertiary sources already, not if this is something new or innovative. And so the students really enjoy the back and forth that they have with the AI, but also are recognizing the limits that the AI has in terms of really struggling to go beyond that summary level. Now that's a quick and dirty overview. I know that my colleagues have much more focused medieval topics, but I did want to share how this can be used at a general level and also with undergraduate students that maybe we would not think of engaging with primary sources and secondary sources. So.
Thank you very much, Professor Forsman. I'll also note that for anybody who has questions, please just type them into the question and answer function on the Zoom platform, and we will be sure to get to them when we open things up for discussion at the end. Now let me turn things over to Professor McAlister.
Okay, can we see anything? Yeah, okay, good, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to take a slightly different tack and talk about an assignment that I used in one of my classes that has actually helped me grapple with this question of how can we responsibly use AI in with our students um, and deal with the many limitations to it. So what I did last year was I ran an assignment where the students had to analyze generative AI on a particular topic. And I wanted to accomplish a few things through this. So firstly, at Towson University, we were told to develop our own AI policies for use in the classroom. So they gave us some recommendations. We could say none at all. We could say, yeah, it's fine, or anywhere in between. So I wanted something, as my role is specifically in digital history, something that was much more better thought out. So I used this assignment to develop my AI policy for student assignments in the classroom. But I also wanted to more widely have my students think about why AI is problematic and why there's issues in data bias, and to think critically about the role that technology plays in their learning as 21st century college students. So I have to give credit. This assignment was inspired by somebody else's assignment, and I saw it on Twitter back when it was Twitter, last August 2023 on the Academics Right Twitter profile. I was sure they had like a blog about this assignment, but I couldn't find it. But certainly the old tweets are still there. They're on Twitter as @academicsright. So I used this adapted assignment for my first year seminar, which is called Explorations in Ocean History. And it is taught within Towson's Honors College. Towson is in Baltimore, so we're a diverse urban school. And although I'm a medievalist, my position is in digital environmental humanities. So I teach more widely within environmental studies and digital humanities as well. So that kind of leads me to a couple of things that I'm going to throw out now for the panelists to think about, and the people in our audience, that obviously we've got the ongoing problem of AI is evolving and not necessarily too clearly. And that this is just one response, but also how discipline dependent our uses of AI are. As an example, I was telling a friend last night who is a biologist that I was doing this seminar today, and she was saying about like how her AI policy focuses on her students using DOIs, because the thing that they use generative AI for is making up citations and making up things that they read. So her catch is to make them have a DOI, and obviously that is not necessarily something that's going to work for medievalists when we're in a situation like Deanna just talked about, where we're using primary sources. So before I get to, let me see, is this going to flick on? Yes. Before I get to the assignment itself, I do a fair amount of workup and prep. So we have a couple of class periods to discuss technology and the use of technology, and specifically AI. And we discuss issues that are particularly associated with digital sources, because as I'm sure most people here are finding, I mean, it's an ongoing struggle to get the students to go to the library to get their research materials, let alone to go to the library and get a printed book for their research materials. They think everything's on the internet. And so my first role is like, hey, guess what? Not everything's on the internet, particularly if you're a medievalist. It really isn't. So I feel that it is very important for my students to know about digital materials and digital sources more generally first. This class, this first year seminar, is seminar based, so, and it's a small class, there's only 20 of them, so this allows us to discuss and brainstorm an awful lot. And these are the questions that I posed to them. I copied and pasted this out of my my class notes, and it really opens their eyes to the issues with going to the internet for information more generally. So really the big takeaways that my students get is that, and I tell them that they're not doing it wrong per se. Just because they're not going and getting a printed book does not mean they're doing it wrong. They can do it better. But I mean, even I type things into Google. We all type things into Google. We just got to be more conscious of how we use it. The bigger issue is they have no idea of like where information on the internet comes from, where it originates from. They're pretty uncritical users of it. So I'm trying to show them that information is made, not born, that there's somebody behind every piece of digital data that's out there. I explained to them that there are algorithms and how algorithms work to generate results and to tailor things to them. We also talk about the importance of being transparent in this and how a lot of things that are online are not transparent. Basically, that anytime that they're looking for information, decisions have been made about that information, and it's not unbiased information either. So I kind of feel like in my bigger trajectory as a digital humanities person that AI is a current flashpoint, that if we accept that students are going to use it, then we need to be aware of the issues and limitations, but it is kind of the flashpoint in bigger dialogue as well. So we talk about this, and then we get into the assignment, and this is in two parts. And it is worth only 5% of their grade overall, but I find that 5% is enough to get them like motivated to actually do it and not skip the assignment and to take it seriously. So there's two parts. Number one, they have to do a written analysis, and then number two, we're going to we talk about it in depth in class. So the students, as their big first year seminar project is, they have to research and write their first research paper ever for most of them. And in my ocean history class, they have to research and write about a shipwreck of their choice and its historical context. So by the time we hit this assignment, we'll have had this conversation I briefly summarized twice already about digital information. And then we have this assignment at the end of the semester. The reason I put it at the end of the semester is I wanted students to feel confident in their knowledge. And I think we all know, at the start of the semester, they don't have a clue what they're doing. But I was hoping by the end of the semester, they would be confident in their knowledge about the shipwreck that they'd chosen and that they've been researching all semester long. So this is the summary of the assignment, again, copied and pasted from the instructions. They had to ask ChatGPT for information on their shipwreck, and they had to copy and paste the questions they asked and the responses into a Word document, and then they had to analyze it using color code. So green was great, it's doing a great job. Yellow or orange was, it's kind of right, but it's not great. And red was, oh my God, this is so wrong. And then they had to add comments as well. So their findings. I again have copied and pasted the comments that they left on this assignment. In short, I got 20 papers that were mainly colored yellow. That they find that it was kind of right, but not great. And I've put some quotes here from their analysis papers in. So are they finding anything that we didn't already know? No, like we as professors knew all of this already, but did the students know this? I think probably a lot of the students did not think about it within this framework, within these terms, that they saw it kind of as more black and white. So based on this, on this feedback, one of them, I like the one at the bottom. This feels like a cop-out. Like, obviously, this is correct, but only because it's kind of just giving a basic answer, can apply to anything. What sank the ship? ChatGPT stuff. So we enjoyed talking about that in class. I had one student as well. They didn't write it. They said it in class, and they said it. They were like, ChatGPT mansplained my paper topic to me. That's what I feel that it did. And I was like, oh, okay, that's useful. So what I asked them to do was to tell me what they would recommend other students to do, what they would recommend my future students to do. I explained I wanted to develop an appropriate AI use policy in the classroom. And they said they recommended it, exactly as Deanna just said, to narrow down a research topic at the start. That if they tended to come in with this big long list of shipwrecks they were interested in, And they said it would be really useful to ask for more information about that particular shipwreck to help you narrow down your topic. But they said that they really did not find it useful at all beyond that, sometimes for writing. So now my AI policy, it says that it is a student-developed AI policy, and the policy is you can use AI to develop your questions, your ideas, but after that point, everything is to be your original work and your original research, and that you can use it to help you with your writing, but not to dominate your writing. And so I did this assignment in fall 2023. So I've at least had the benefit of now spring 2024 putting this in action. And what did I find? I found that actually the students didn't even use it as much as I was like, you can use it this much. They were like, I don't really want it as much to ask it questions about my shipwreck. But at least I could say this is a student developed AI policy. So the question, I suppose, really is how do we, deal with this in our classroom? The fact that the students are going to use it. I mean, we can ban the use of ChatGPT in student work, but what my students pointed out is that it is already embedded in so many things. So a lot of the students use Grammarly to help them with their writing. It is already embedded in Grammarly. And in Google search, it's already embedded. It does such a terrible job, I think, in Google search. I tried to see whether I could take it out of my Google search, and Google's like, no, it's here. It's not even in beta testing anymore. It is here. So I don't think there's any way of getting around it. I think it's just educating students to be more critical users of it. And as such, because of my own particular interest, to use it to get students to think about bigger issues in information bias, how information is obtained, the ethics surrounding this, because after all, ChatGPT is being trained on their work and the work of others when they are asking it questions about their project. And getting them to think about what skills they lose that they will need to be successful college students and in careers afterwards when they take these shortcuts. Just because it's there doesn't mean that it's a good idea. I do think having students reach their own conclusions helps a lot. We can tell them as professors, this is bad, this is bad. But it resonates more when they lead their own discovery and have their own agency in the classroom. But the problem was that they only knew enough to be really critical of AI at the end of the semester, not at the beginning of the semester when it's most valuable, arguably. And of course, just as my last concluding thought, this is a conversation we're going to need to have again and again and again, because this thing is moving. It gets updated. This assignment I did in December 2023. It's now August 2024. It's changed since I ran this assignment. It's time for me to now ask the students to update the AI policy in the classroom again. So that is all I have to say. And thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you, Professor McAlister. A quick note to all of you who are watching the presentation, the whole webinar will be uploaded to the Medieval Academy's YouTube channel for webinars. The participants have all kindly agreed to have the presentation shared. So stay tuned and check the channel there and share this also with your friends and colleagues who are interested. I'm also happy to report that we currently have over 100 people watching the webinar, which is a sign of just how much interest there is in this topic. And with that, I will now turn things over to my colleagues in the Saarland, Dr. Weiss and Professor Andenna.
Yes, thank you very much. I will start. I hope that the presentation will be okay. You can see that, but not in full screen, no? Okay. Yes, at German University, as aware, knowledge of Latin is an important prerequisite for the study of medieval history. However, not all students have this knowledge, and many avoid the Middle Ages because they are put off by dealing with Latin sources. My colleague Miriam Weiss and I became increasingly aware of this problem in our seminars 2 years ago, our university started the Data Pin interdisciplinary project founded by the Ministry of Economy and Sciences of the Saarlandes, which aim to facilitate innovation in teaching through the use of artificial intelligence. Miriam, Weiss, and I designed and implemented the project AI generated text and their use in the humanities. And the use in the humanities, possibilities and limits, which was part of this collaborative interdisciplinary project. The scope of the project was to analyze digital text and translation tools with regard to their use in teaching history. In the first part, in the first phase of our project, we tested that use of various digital translations tools in the teaching of medieval studies. These included ChatGPT, Google Translate, and others that are based to different degrees of artificial intelligence. We wanted to understand whether these tools could make it easier or more difficult for students to access Latin sources. As part of a seminar, Miriam Weiss asked the students to compare translations produced by digital tools with those produced by scholars and published in critical editions. The reliability of the translation suggestions generated by the tools was analyzed and critically discussed. The results of this analysis process show that, in general, the digital tools provide relatively good Latin translation that are close to the original text, while academic translations often provide free interpretations. In a second step, the limitation of the translation produced by the digital tools, they are sometimes grammatical problem in the phrases or the syntactic problems, were identified and discussed together and critically with the students. We found that the digital tools, and particularly ChatGPT, do not help to identify places and people. This was the big problem for the students. A service provide, why is not nothing? A service provided by scientific translation as part of a critical commentary. The students also realized that the digital tools cannot replace personal expertise. It became very clear for the students that knowledge of Latin is an advantage when it comes to correctly assessing the generated translation, recognizing inconsistencies, and correcting missing identification. The result of the first teaching experience have shown us that it is important to introduce students to the peculiarities of AI-generated translations and to make them aware of their limitations and problems. Once these conditions are met, the use of AI in translation becomes an opportunity rather than a threat for students. This finding allowed us to make a positive assessment of the use of digital tools and particularly of ChatGPT in the classrooms, and to move on the second phase of our project. In the winter semester 2023-24, we offered the seminar ChatGPT and Medieval Studies, How Can I Use AI in Medieval History? Miriam will now report on the concept of the seminar and its results.
Thank you very much, Cristina. I hope the internet is stable now. At the beginning of our course, the students received an original, unedited source, were 3 charters from the Saarlandes State Archives in digital form, and their task was to independently subject this to the historical process of source preparation and interpretation. To do this, they had to transcribe the source, translate, and interpret it. In order to find out to what extent artificial intelligence can help within this scientific process today, they were able to try out all the digital tools freely available to them. For example, ChatGPT, transcription tools, or translation tools. We jointly analyzed to what extent the various tools are helpful or not, what their limitations are, and how they should be handled critically, especially if they want to be used for scientific purposes. The innovation potential lay in a special methodology used for the course. We adapted a sequence pattern of stories known from storytelling, the so-called hero's journey, and reworked it for use in our course. The hero's journey method comes from storytelling and provides the structure of a narrative. I think it's one more slide, Cristina. I think we have to.
No, they are not.
I think it's the next one. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have just these.
I start again. The hero's journey method comes from storytelling and provides the structure of a narrative. Such stories can be novels, films, computer games, or much more. The only basic thing is that 12 consecutive stages are completed as part of the narrative of the heroes. The diagram illustrates these stages of the hero's journey. You should now see the diagram. I think it's the next slide. The next one.
Okay.
It is.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
First, the hero is introduced in the ordinary familiar world. He or she then receives a call from outside, usually due to an event, to go on an adventure. He or she initially refuses this call because he or she does not trust himself or herself to master the adventure. Mentors then appear who convince him or her to take on the adventure. He or she crosses the first threshold into the adventure and meets allies and enemies and has to overcome tests. In the course of the adventure, he or she penetrates into the deepest cave, that means the worst place, and has to fight a decisive battle. As a reward, he or she then receives the sword, with which he or she can return. On his or her path, the hero transforms or renews him or herself internally in order to finally return to the familiar world with the elixir that means the successful advance.
Hold on, everyone. We wait for technical difficulties to resolve themselves.
Okay, I'm back. I'm very, very sorry.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I try again. The course of the process here is that the students come to the usual course in order to be confronted with an extremely challenging task that they have to solve completely on their own. In this case, their challenge was to completely prepare an original source themselves. This means that they first had to transcribe the original, then translate the Latin text, and finally classify and interpret the content historically. In order to provide them with help, they are provided with digital tools as mentors, such as ChatGPT, Transkribus, or Google Translate, who can help them at any time. Researching the digital tools and trying them out will once again be the responsibility of the students themselves. During the course of the event, the students experienced progress and setbacks met allies such as the archives and enemies such as most of the transcription tools today. They had to fight the battle of transcribing the charters by themselves and ultimately emerge from the event strengthened in their own skills and more competent in using digital tools. You see here some of the answers the students gave to questions during the course. The entire course can be understood in the following interactive way, which we developed together with the students. In particular, numerous student voices can be found on the individual stages, their hero's journey, as well as their overall experiences. The basic principle of the presented course is innovative in relation to AI because it redefines the role of the actors involved in the teaching learning process and adapts it to today's conditions. It aims at independence, intrinsic motivation, and acquisition of skills, which fulfills key requirements for contemporary learning processes. In addition, artificial intelligence is being included as a new actor in the teaching learning process, which in turn corresponds to current studies on learning. Digital actors will continue to play a role in every learning setting in the future, and it is important to emphasize that in this teaching concept, the role of digital tools as actors in the learning setting was assigned by us. As helpers or mentors, the digital tools became supporters of the students who were able to reduce their inhibitions when dealing with artificial intelligence and learned that the assessment of how good or bad such help is still comes from themselves. Ideas of all-knowing AI were dismantled, the experience of research as a collective task was conveyed, and confidence in one's own learned skills was strengthened. This not only resulted in the acquisition of additional skills, but also in a deeper understanding of the skills already acquired during their studies. Trying out and working with artificial intelligence made it clear to the students what role AI has in relation to their own human intelligence. It supports but does not replace it, and results are only as good as the human prompts given to AI. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will now turn to our final presenter, Professor Stilleman.
Okay, can you see the screen? Excellent. First, thank you very much for the invitation, Rowan. It's a pleasure to be able to join this conversation. And also, I've noticed some people in the audience are using not just the chat, but the Q&A function to ask questions and make. I think that's a great tool. It would really help me to hear what you think about what we're saying through the Q&A box as well. So I want to start with a full disclosure. As I was preparing these brief remarks for today, I did not use AI at all. Not ChatGPT, not Gemini, not Claude. After using and testing these mass market tools intensively for almost 2 years, I have become somewhat skeptical. What I want to talk to you about today is what in the trade people call industry AI. That is, tools tailored to our specific needs as researchers and instructors. And also about the analog assignments that AI has inspired. I want to make 3 points. The first is that AI is problematic. This has to do with the concern that students using ChatGPT to take shortcuts are negatively impacting their learning and their academic honesty. A year and a half ago, for a winter course, I switched the postings or response papers that students usually submit on Canvas the evening before class. I asked them instead to write at the beginning of each meeting using pencil on paper. I call this approach blue book postings. Students receive the prompt at the beginning of the class and produce either a short paragraph or a series of bullet points, about 200 words in either case. I collected their postings at the end of the meeting, but I did not grade them. The writing was not an assignment in itself, but their chance to prepare for class conversations. I learned 3 things that quarter. First, that students who usually feel shy, insecure, or are reticent to speak in class had a chance to rehearse and prepare what they wanted to say, and all students spoke at least twice during each class. Also, it turns out that students like to write, and after 5 minutes were up, they often ask for a couple more minutes to finish their ideas. And finally, this ungraded, playful writing allowed them to find a voice I had not heard before. It was engaged, intimate, and curious. But more than anything, these Blue Book postings made clear to them that writing can be a tool for thinking, not just for producing texts. So second, then what can we use generative AI for? I designed a course with a medical doctor. It's called Food, Culture, and Health in East Asia. It looks at medieval and early modern discourses about food, and in particular, narratives of illness and healing. But it also incorporates modern scientific literature that speaks to these claims. How can I help students prepare for this class? Half of them will have no scientific literacy. The other half, no experience with close reading or discourse analysis. So I started collaborating with a startup in San Francisco. They are developing a tutor that can chat with the students as they read the primary and secondary sources, asking them questions about the text, clarifying concepts, correcting mistakes, and keeping track of their progress. The AI tutor can also grade the students, but I think we should be turning this option off. We want the tutor to be a tool that the students control, not an assignment that needs to be aced. The advantage for instructors is that the AI tutor can report to us ahead of each meeting and tell us how students are doing as a group. For example, what issues or topics they are struggling to understand. With that information, we can structure the in-class conversation to address those topics and clarify the issues together as a group when we meet. So that is my second point on how to help students read. And finally, how can we use AI to help students write? I had hoped to ask this tech platform to design a writing tutor, an AI tutor that can talk to students as they polish their writing. It would not write for them, but help them understand what makes a text engaging, an argument convincing, a phrase powerful. The tutor can be dialed using Strunk and White's The Elements of Style, but also Ernest Hemingway and David Foster Wallace, and The New Yorker and the New York Review of Books, and so on. After the students have worked with this tool for a quarter, the final exam will ask them to write on a Blue Book, putting pencil to paper, responding to a prompt I have just given them. My expectation was that their writing would be better because they would not be using the garden variety AI of ChatGPT, but an industry-specific AI tutor tailored to the particular needs and challenges of university learning. The problem is, in the last 6 months, ChatGPT has improved so much, it can offer such a tutor. The startups that were developing industry AI for colleges are now in trouble. The industry is down to a handful of powerful players: ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Jasper. So I want to bring up 3 assignments I am incorporating as a response to this situation. First, in our graduate seminar, we explore industry AI tools to OCR medieval manuscripts. The platform is called Kuronet and was developed by the Japanese government through their Center for Open Data in the Humanities. It can read paleographic documents extremely well. And it lets you control how the information is displayed so that students can use it as they train their own paleographic literacy. It comes as a phone app and a tablet app as well, which you can use when you go to do archival work. But we also talk about the limitations of this platform, which was trained on woodblock dataset and thus isn't as accurate for handwritten manuscripts. The second, an assignment that involves reading and writing that cannot be completed using ChatGPT. We watch a film about medieval Japan and make annotations of specific passages to then use in class for discussion. The platform is called MediaThread. It was developed by Columbia and is being launched this fall at Stanford with accessibility improvements. The film I'm using here, for example, is of interest because the director used actual medieval objects. But you can really use this platform for pretty much any course in any field. So the third and final assignment, that is 100% analog, is meant to complement our focus on text, on screens, and on digital tools. This is a critical making exercise in which students in the humanities explore making objects as a way to help their understanding of their primary sources. So I'm going to give you an example. This is a reconstruction of a medieval saw based on an archaeological finding and is part of a project on illustrated narratives about the construction of temples. Which is to say that sometimes it is also fine to teach medieval languages and cultures using medieval technology. And that's pretty much what I had. Thank you so much. And if you want to contact me, just scan that QR code with your phone.
Thank you very much, Professor Stillerman. So we'll open things up now to question and answer. If you do have questions, please post them in the Q&A function, and I will make sure we get through as many as possible. We have some specific questions for individual presenters, but I want to start off with one of the general ones that was raised by Annegret Oehme, who raised some of the concerns around AI. First of all, how do you feel about prompting students to use AI tools, especially ones that are not based on university servers or vetted or monitored by university IT? And then additionally, what do you do about the fact that we don't know everything that is being done with the data that we are generating, and that we're implicitly supporting companies by increasing the traffic on their tools, which of course also has an ecological impact. So these are obviously concerns for many who are engaging with this space. I'll say from my perspective, in the heart of Silicon Valley, where of course other people using these tools serve to produce wealthier companies or serve to ensure that we still have funding for the humanities still at Stanford, sort of continue to use them in general. But in all seriousness, I think from my perspective, ethically, I know that my students are going to go on using these tools. And so if in my classroom, I can teach them to use them more critically and more robustly and more sensitively, then that sort of from the ecological and ethical side of things, I feel sort of is balance things that would get some of sort of the questionable side of AI tools. That leaves aside the questions of using general market tools. And certainly universities are working with the major companies to have standalone sort of closed AI proprietary uses. So many healthcare systems are already doing this so that patient data isn't being inputted into the systems. And I think those will be more and more rolled out to more and more universities and colleges and education institutions very soon, so that we are addressing that particular issue. But obviously it is a big one at the moment, when most of the time we are not using institution-supported, institution-hosted AI platforms, but just the general ones. And that certainly raises issues. But I'll leave it open to the panelists now for your collective thoughts.
I'll go ahead and start it. I basically give my students the option. They can use ChatGPT or AI, they don't have to. So when I say refine your research topic to a research question, I say, use any of these library guides of how to do it. You can find them on Purdue's OWL, just Google the term research topic into question, they can find it, or talk to ChatGPT. The ChatGPT exercise that I talked about is an option that they can choose from a menu of options. So the students are not forced to use ChatGPT. I am not forcing them to the platform, but as Rowan said, some of them are going to use it. And we've all encountered bot-written things being turned in, so we know that they're using it. And this gives them an opportunity to use it that is sanctioned, so to speak, for those who want to use it. I've actually found that some students try it and hate it. Some students try it and love it. Some students never try it. I think the other question of the ethical piece of is the bot going to scrape whatever is put in there, I think is something that really needs to be considered. My system basically has a closed off version of Copilot. If my students access Copilot through their university account, then that is cordoned off and not being used to generate, train new bots, or at least, has some of that cutoff on it. I like Claude for the reason that Claude will only use what you put into it to train if you specifically say, hey, use this to train. And it is pretty up on those particular policies. I also, for students who get really concerned about this, there are platforms that you can download so that anything you put into it is not going back up to the internet and actually being used to train any particular bot. It all lives on your computer. And so I mean, I think that there are ways that we can expose our students to AI, give them options to use AI, and also think about those ethical concerns, particularly since what I'm hearing as somebody who teaches at a standalone community college is that industry wants our students trained on AI. And if industry wants our students trained to be able to interact with AI when they graduate and get jobs with industries, then we have to figure out how we're going to do this. So that's kind of my initial stab at it.
I'm just going to chime with what Deanna just concluded with and say that I kind of see my role as getting my students to be critical consumers and users of all digital technology. And while I, decry it in many ways, as she said, like this is the reality. Our students are going to go and get jobs after they graduate, and I would like them to be competitive, thoughtful, employees in whatever career they go into. But of course, all of these things that were highlighted in the question are things that we talk about before the assignment. And I think they're important questions and points, the ecology, the ethics, for using a whole raft of digital technologies, not just AI. And it blows students have never thought about it in this terms. And so they kind of like, they have that dazed look coming out of the classroom, like, whoa, my whole worldview has just spun upside down. And that we don't know how Google makes its search engine algorithms. Another way that I show it very quickly and convincingly are the studies Wikipedia has done itself on who provides Wikipedia content. And that's a really easy, quick way to be like, hey, don't go to the bibliographies at the end of Wikipedia articles because those are really biased. So yeah, I think, I don't know, I see just as what Deanna said, that a lot of these are things for us to discuss, but also we're the small fish. I think the best we can, and I think we're to be responsible educators, we need to raise these things with our students and have them think about it.
Yes, I think we can also agree with all that was said. We have students that who don't want to use ChatGPT, for example, for ethical reasons. So
Okay, perhaps I don't know what Miriam wanted to say, but I can perhaps say that also I'm agree also with the colleagues. We wanted to be responsible teaching, and we want to try also to help students to use these digital tools and to use AI responsible, and to have a benefit, and not to see or demonize these tools, because in our faculty they are a very a discussion. If you have to constrict the student didn't use these tool and these digital new systems, and we thought that it's not the real way, but the real way and responsible way is to accompany the students in the use, and to see what they can do with them also for their future. And perhaps Miriam is again here. You can also.
No, I will never answer any question again and say anything. It doesn't work. No, I think that's what we wanted to say. Yeah.
Ahia, anything to add?
Was that for me?
Anything to add on your end, Ahia?
Sure, very briefly. I mean, I agree with everything that is being said. I think we're facing a new technology that we don't know fully well how it's gonna develop and how it's working. What I have to say about my specific position is that I am aware that this is a technology that is being developed by our students. because we work in Silicon Valley. So the way I approach my courses is I'm assuming I'm talking to a maker, not to a user. So when I talk about AI and I show how AI should and should not be used, I'm hoping that it's going to have an impact in how industry thinks about these tools. Most of the people in STEM in our university take some humanities courses, so I think it's really a great chance for us to talk to the industry as it talks to itself on what kind of tools we're going to have in the next few years. But apart from that, I think that what I would have said was already covered.
We have more questions than we can possibly cover in the remaining 3 minutes of our webinar. But I want to go, two of the first questions were for Professor Forsman, and both were about your approach, specifically your assignments, one from Sarah Lipton, one from Andrea Castonguay, on sort of how actually you scaffold your assignments with your students over the course of the semester. Can you talk a little bit more about that for our audience?
Sure. I'm happy to share the assignment, and I can put it up on the screen, or if you'd like to email me, I can happily do that. I'll put my email in the chat. The assignment is one of a set of options, and students basically have to complete, I use this method called cafeteria style grading, where students basically choose options from a menu and have to complete so many from the menu by the end of the semester. The specific task that I have them do is basically think about every week we go through a specific unit of material that has tertiary source, primary sources, visual sources, and a secondary source. So thinking about a specific topic from that unit, generate some type of question or idea that you want to chat with ChatGPT with, have the conversation, give me a copy of that conversation. And now I'm telling them to just copy paste the entire conversation because the interfaces keep changing. And turn it into me, and then critique the conversation. So they have very specific steps that they follow in order to go through it. And what I found is that it really depends on the student's skill level across the board, right? I have some students who are very naive, who accept everything that they read, and their critique is very, very poor, which then is reflected in how well they do on the assignment. They don't do well on the assignment if they're not going to show me that they're engaging with the skills of the course. And other students who have demonstrated the historical thinking skills that can look at ChatGPT and just go, wow, it just falls short. It's not capable of actually looking at this at a complex level. And yeah, the cafeteria style grading, I didn't make that up. I can also share the article where I got it from. Somebody in chemistry made it up, but I love the way it works. So I think that answered the questions that I got. So it's not a scaffolded assignment per se, but it is scaffolding the skills that I have them practice over and over and over again every single week in the class.
Great, thank you. Ariel.
Yeah, can I just add, I mean, that's fascinating. Can I just add that a resource that I found very useful in designing assignments, thinking about AI, was put out by the Center for Teaching and Learning here on our campus. What is the best way to share the link? On the chat or the Q&A?
Ariel, if you send me the link, I'm going to send an email out to everyone who registered for today's panel with some follow-up links from our panelists. So that's probably the easiest way. But on that note, as we come to the end of the time, for those of you who are watching still, if you have resources that you think that we should be aware of, as you know, putting on my chair of the committee hat, please send them to me. We are eager as our committee to be gathering ideas for innovative things that are being done in the field of medieval studies in this area that we can share, that we can advertise to our committee, through our coffee hours, through our other programming, through other MAA communications. So we are excited to know what's out there. We hope that today's webinar gave you a sample of some of the things that your colleagues are doing. And surely this is a conversation that is going to continue with great vigor and controversy and liveliness in the coming months and years. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to all of the panelists for contributing their expertise.